just crack him and he would just fire back at you, and he knocked a lot of people out just because he could take a shot so well.
Looking at Chuck Liddell during his peak years, the guy looked absolutely invincible. But that reputation came at a brutal price. His entire fighting philosophy revolved around eating shots and counting on his iron jaw to keep him standing no matter what.
He shouldn't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting. At 50, he clearly can't take a punch anymore.
When the whispers started about Chuck needing to hang up the gloves, you could already see the toll written across his face.
If somebody was picking on you, bullying you, maybe even hitting you, and you stood there with your hands by your side, your fist balled up, your hands by your side, and the daycare teacher was like, "Why are you not fighting back?"
Well, my mom told me I wasn't allowed to fight. I wasn't allowed to hit anybody, so, I wouldn't do it. I mean, as my mom said I can't, so I guess I'll just sit here and take it. But and it happened a few times, and he finally called my mom and talked to her and said, "You got to let him defend himself. We can't be there every time something's happening." And he's just letting him. And I was like, okay, So she took me to my grandfather and had him teach me some straight punches, and started throwing punches. And as far as defending myself, the rest is history.
Nobody was really surprised when news started circulating about Chuck potentially suffering from brain trauma. It felt like the inevitable conclusion to a career built on a style that was always going to catch up with him eventually. This is how one of MMA's most terrifying competitors went too far and ended up paying the ultimate price. Meet the Iceman.
It was Koi Kon Karate Do was my first style as black belt. I won our nationals for our style.
Charles David Liddell entered the world on December 17, 1969 in Santa Barbara, California. A single mom and his grandparents raised him. Those early boxing fundamentals came straight from his grandfather's teachings.
People probably don't have any idea that you have a business degree.
I want to get a PE degree, but my grandma didn't believe that was a real major. So I had to pick a major when I was a freshman. I picked accounting. I was good at it.
Outside of organized sports, however, he developed a reputation for toughness in a different way. Liddell often found himself involved in street fights, where his size, strength, and early martial arts training set him apart from his peers.
I used to even say in high school, I used to say, man, it sucks. Well, the thing I'm really good at, I can't make money doing. And I was talking about street fighting. I was going to Cal Poly at the time. I was like 19, I think. One of the resident wrestling practices goes to me, by any chance, did you jump off a car and kick a guy in the head? Yeah. How do you know?
Did you lose any fights in high school? Was there anybody you fought that somebody caught you, or did you ever none? So you don't remember ever?
When Chuck turned 12, he dove into Kawakan karate training. The art meant so much to him that he eventually had those very words permanently inked onto his scalp as a lasting tribute.
I got called into an old karate school. And they called me in because they had a black belt coming in to spar. I came in and it was John.
So I get there and the guy goes, "Oh yeah, well, I can't really fight you, so you're going to go with one of my students." There it was Chuck, and I was like, okay, all right, I'm going to go. I gave my card before I left and just said, if you ever really want to learn, the sport part of it or whatever, and give me a call. And
so I called him up and I'm like, I'm like, hey, he's like, yeah, come on up, let's go, let's train.
His natural athletic ability earned him a spot at California Polytechnic State University as a Division I wrestler. By 1995, he walked away with his business accounting degree. His grandmother had steered him away from physical education, convinced it wasn't worth the paper it was printed on.
How did you get your nickname?
My trainer, John Hackman, gave it to me. I think it was like my third or fourth kickboxing fight. He came looking for me, couldn't find me. He finally found me, I was sleeping. He's like, "You don't get nervous before every fight?" No. They started calling me Iceman because I don't get nervous before fights.
He was the Iceman. I've never seen him lose his cool.
Despite his success, the sport offered little financial security at the time, and he often struggled to make ends meet.
I was having a lot of fun, but I wasn't making any money. And the UFC had come along during that time, but no one knew how to get into it.
During this period, he even considered leaving combat sports altogether to find a steady job that could support him long term.
So I was close to going back and getting a real job. I graduated in accounting right around 97.
Chuck's amateur kickboxing foundation was rock solid. 20 wins against just 2 losses, with 16 opponents getting knocked out cold. He claimed 2 national amateur kickboxing titles during this period. This was when he crossed paths with John Hackleman, a seasoned kickboxer kickboxer running the Pit Gym in San Luis Obispo.
When did you meet Dana White? When did that connection happen?
Dana was actually managing, I think, Tito. And Wayne Harriman, who's friends with Tito and Dana, was a friend of mine and would see me train with Tito. And he actually told Dana, you might want to sign this guy. He might be better than Tito. So Dana signed me then. And he was my manager. So he's managing me and Tito.
Simultaneously?
Yeah.
Well, before the UFC, I managed both Chuck and Tito. So, I did have a relationship with both guys.
It was awesome. I traveled around for a long time trying to promote the sport. I did a lot of things trying to just get the sport out there.
Hackelman became Chuck's most important mentor. He took Chuck's natural knockout power and molded it into the relentless striking approach that would eventually make him a UFC legend. Hackelman was also responsible for giving Chuck that legendary nickname.
I'm telling you, when Chuck Liddell was in his prime, he was one of the most terrifying fucking human beings that's ever walked the face of the earth.
UFC 17 in Mobile, Alabama, marked Chuck's professional mixed martial arts debut in 1998. He took a unanimous decision win over Noe Hernandez. Before stepping onto the biggest stage in the sport, Chuck formed a connection with Dana White, who was managing fighters at the time.
It was in Tito's head big time because every time they trained together, Tito would get beat up. I'm talking drop him on the ground and Tito refusing to get back up. Chuck would want to hook up and spar and whatever, and Tito would never want to spar.
When we trained together, I took him down way more than he took me down.
No way.
But that's why he didn't want to fight me, because he couldn't out wrestle me. And then when we're striking, I used to drop him with body shots, and he never dropped me.
He never dropped you?
No, never.
Absolutely, positively would not fight Chuck because he knew he couldn't beat Chuck.
Chuck hit his first major roadblock early in his UFC run. UFC 19 in 1999 saw him lose via technical submission to Jeremy Horn, who caught him in an arm triangle choke. That would remain the only time anyone ever submitted him. He bounced back strong with a string of crushing victories. From 2000 through 2002, he steamrolled through big names like Paul Jones, Kevin Randleman, Murilo Bustamante, and Vitor Belfort. May 27th, 2001 took him to Japan, where he knocked out Guy Mezger in round 2 at. He made history as the first UFC athlete to compete in Japan's premier organization.
The other event got fucking huge, and then Chuck Liddell came onto the scene.
Yes.
And when Chuck Liddell was the champion, Chuck Liddell was so fucking terrifying.
Yeah.
He was this do or die berserker. He would just come at you, just swinging bombs, take one on the chin, knock dudes out. His fights were wild.
He didn't give a shit.
He was the real reason why the UFC became uber popular, because you would watch The Ultimate Fighter and it was a wild fight, a great fight, but then you need a destroyer.
Right.
You need a destroyer, and that
Yeah.
destroyer was Chuck Liddell. And
Okay.
for the run where he was at the top, where Chuck Liddell was just murking people.
So he was kind of like the Mike.
The champion Tito Ortiz wanted nothing to do with fighting Chuck. They trained together, and Tito understood exactly what kind of danger Chuck represented.
His fights when he knocked out Tito Ortiz, like, oh my God, he was a monster.
Right.
He was a monster.
I knew Chuck Liddell was going to win those fights. I knew he was. He had Tito's number. Tito couldn't deal with Chuck's style, his power, his wrestling. Tito couldn't take Chuck down, and Chuck was 1,000,000% in Tito's head.
It was Liddell's 4th consecutive title defense, and it emphatically reaffirmed his dominance over his rival.
By the end of
The UFC decided to create an interim light heavyweight belt and booked Chuck against Randy Couture at UFC 43 in 2003. Couture's straight punches and clinch work completely shut down Chuck's signature looping hooks. Couture grounded him and finished the fight by TKO. Later that same year, Chuck entered Pride's 2003 middleweight Grand Prix. He flattened Alistair Overeem in round 1, but fell to Quinton Rampage Jackson via second-round TKO in the semifinals. Once Ortiz sorted out his contract issues with the UFC, he lost to Randy Couture. That opened the door for Chuck versus Ortiz at UFC 47 in April 2004. Chuck lived up to every bit of the anticipation. Second-round knockout of Ortiz. Early 2005 saw Chuck selected as a coach for the first season of The Ultimate Fighter, facing off against Randy Couture. The show became a massive hit. Then April 16, 2005 arrived. UFC 52, Chuck knocked out Couture in round 1 and finally claimed the UFC Light Heavyweight Championship. They created another spectacle.
Rampage wasted little time in the rematch. He caught Liddell with a right hook in the first round, dropping him, and followed up with ground strikes to score a knockout just 1 minute 53 seconds into the fight. In a flash, Chuck Liddell's reign as champion was over.
Left hook to the bottom.
It was a stunning defeat, the first knockout loss of Liddell's UFC career, and it marked a turning point.
Chuck, you've been the most dominant light heavyweight champion in the history of the UFC.
What Michael Jordan accomplished for basketball, Chuck basically did for mixed martial arts. Between 2005 and 2007, Chuck successfully defended his championship 4 times. He beat Jeremy Horn, Randy Couture in their third meeting, Renato Sobral, and Tito Ortiz in the rematch. That second Ortiz fight at UFC 66 shattered every financial record the UFC had set up to that point. Chuck fought through a torn MCL but still managed to stop Ortiz in the third round.
When Chuck was young, he was known for having like a granite chin. You could just crack him and he would just fire back at you, and he knocked a lot of people out just because he could take a shot so well. And then one day, it just stopped working.
By 2006, Chuck Liddell had pretty much demolished every top challenger in his division. He was the undisputed face of the organization. That mohawk, those skull tattoos, and those celebration dances after knockouts became absolutely legendary. He put together 7 straight UFC knockouts, a record that still stands today.
Yeah, and then the knockouts came, you know, like Rampage KO'd him, and then other people were KOing him, and then it just got to a point where it's just like one good punch and you would just go out. It's like your brain knows you're so tough, and it's like, hey, we got to protect this guy. He's stupid. He's going to keep getting hit, so let's just shut off.
Every dominant champion eventually runs into someone who has their number. For Chuck, that reality check arrived in 2007. May 26th, 2007, UFC 71, he was defending his title against Quinton Rampage Jackson, the same fighter who had beaten him in Japan 4 years before. This time UFC gold was on the line and the pressure was enormous.
Yeah, when I got to the weigh-in and we did the face-off, for me, I was like, oh man, Chuck looks serious, you know, because I watched him so many times. That's when I really started to think man, I'm fighting Chuck Liddell. So that's when, for me, the nerves started. And then I hit up Randy Couture, who just happened to be a floor below me, and I go and see Randy, and I'm like, oh man, Randy, I'm scared, man. I'm scared. And Randy's like, what's going on? He's like, oh man, I just can't shake this feeling, man. I'm just so nervous about tomorrow, and I don't want to get beat up and knocked out in front of everybody. And the best advice I ever got, he said, you got to make friends with the worst enemy. When you make friends with the worst enemy, you understand that life will go on. And then I worked myself up into a lather just thinking about it. Like, yeah, I got to face my fears. I got to face my worst enemy.
Stories came out about Chuck hitting nightclubs during fight week. People started questioning his preparation and commitment. Chuck insisted this was just his normal routine for Vegas fights, but the conversation about his lifestyle choices had begun. Just 4 months later, Chuck was back in action against Keith Jardine. Most people felt he hadn't given himself nearly enough time to recover properly. Jardine's unorthodox style and leg kick strategy earned him a split decision victory. Chuck had now lost 2 fights in a row.
It was crazy.
And he didn't get up.
It was such a flush shot.
The brutal loss was a sobering moment, and many observers thought it might be the end of the road for Chuck.
Because his style was so aggressive, that people could just set, boom, and counter, like Rashad Evans did with him. And so you're getting his momentum coming forward and the shot, and he would get flatlined.
December 2007 brought Chuck face-to-face with Wanderlei Silva at UFC 79. 2 knockout specialists with nothing but bad intentions for each other. They delivered exactly what everyone hoped for. 3 incredible rounds of pure violence. Chuck took the unanimous decision. The fight earned 207's Fight of the Year honors. Tragically, this would be the last victory of Chuck's entire MMA career.
I care about him. I care about his health. And it's over, man. We all turned 40. It's over. Listen, I've been pushing for retirement. He's my friend. I love him. I care about him. We sat down. We had a 2-hour talk. He wanted to do this. He fucking has nothing to prove. Nothing to prove. He doesn't have to prove anything to me, the rest of the world. He's got shitloads of money. There's no reason for it.
By 2008, All those years of absorbing punishment were finally starting to show on the Iceman. September 6, 2008, Chuck squared off with Rashad Evans at UFC.
Chuck told me before the season started, when I asked him to do it, he said, I guarantee you, Tito will not fight me. We'll do this show and he'll pull out of the fight, I guarantee it. And that's why when Tito pulled out, I was like, holy shit, Chuck was right. And, I had to go tell Chuck that Tito pulled out. Tito pulled out of the fight.
That fucking pussy. Don't let that guy fight anymore, man. He's a fucking
Round 2 brought one of the most shocking knockouts in UFC history. A single overhand right from Evans sent Chuck crashing to the canvas, completely unconscious.
Chuck Liddell came in. He worked hard for this thing. And, I think him and Rich Franklin tonight fought the type of fights that made them both famous and made them both world champions tonight. Those two went at it. He means a lot to this company, and he means a lot to the sport. He means a lot to me personally. He was a great champion. He was a great business partner. He's always going to have a home with the UFC. He gave it his last shot. You know what? He went out like Chuck Liddell would. Came out blasting, bombing, tried to put Rich away in the slugfest, and he gave the fans a good last fight with the Iceman.
April 2009 saw Chuck return to face Mauricio Shogun Rua at UFC 97. Shogun finished Chuck with a first-round TKO. Following this defeat, UFC President Dana White started publicly questioning whether Chuck should call it a career.
People asked me for a long time why I stuck around so long. Like, if I was getting my ass kicked and then getting knocked out, it would have been a lot easier to hang it up. I was getting paid really well, and I was winning fights and then just getting caught. So you always think, oh man, I can fix that. We had a dinner together. I said, look, man, I can't figure out why this happened. I can't compete the way I used to. So, I'm done.
And I'm here today with my partner, Lorenzo Fertitta, to announce his retirement. Myself, my partners owe a lot to Chuck Liddell. And we're also here today to announce that he is becoming one of the top executives in the UFC. Chuck Liddell is now the new Executive Vice President of Business Development.
They settled on one last fight. The plan was Tito Ortiz after they coached against each other on Season 11 of The Ultimate Fighter. But Ortiz had to withdraw due to injury.
And Chuck Liddell and Tito are fighting, so what else you got?
Ooh, what do you think of that?
Not my cup of tea, but,
You're going to watch it.
For sure. Well,
I'm going to watch it.
Yeah, we'll watch it. We might do a fight companion for it.
There's some people say it shouldn't happen, right?
Oh no, I don't think it shouldn't happen. I look at it more like I think if Chuck Liddell was still employee of the UFC, getting paid $400,000 just to chill or whatever he was doing for the UFC, he would not be fighting. I think it's more of a money play, which bums me out because I think Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz, what they did for the sport, should be compensated for the rest of their lives. It bums me out they have to fight to make money. That bums me out.
Chuck's final UFC appearance came against Rich Franklin at UFC 11-15 in June 2010. He got knocked out at the end of the opening round. 3 straight knockout losses to end his legendary career.
Can't be fighting. He shouldn't be fighting at 50. He clearly can't take a punch anymore.
July 10th, 2009, saw Chuck inducted into the UFC Hall of Fame Pioneer Wing. December 29th, 2010, he officially announced his retirement at the UFC 25 press conference. The UFC created a vice president of business development position for him. They called it a lifetime appointment.
He just felt like he always had Tito's number. But this is the problem, is like Tito wins now. When it all said and done, Tito KO'd him. And he KO'd him more soundly than Chuck ever KO'd Tito. Yeah, Tito put Chuck out. He put him out. You're dealing with a guy whose brains are, it's just, he's been scrambled too many times.
He didn't immediately make a retirement speech in the cage, but the consensus in the MMA community was that this would be the end. And in March 2020, Chuck Liddell confirmed he had retired from MMA competition again, this time for good. The
2016 brought new ownership to the UFC in a $4 billion sale. The company restructured everything from top to bottom. Chuck Liddell and fellow Hall of Famer Matt Hughes both lost their executive positions. So much for that lifetime guarantee.
He has been saying that he misses it. It was his favorite thing.
Yeah, I miss playing baseball.
He misses it.
To me, it's more of a sad story.
See, I think Tito, he might actually want this fight just to fight Chuck again.
On November 24th, 2018, Chuck Liddell and Tito Ortiz stepped into the cage one last time.
2018 rolled around, and the 48-year-old Chuck announced he was coming back. He wanted a third fight with Tito Ortiz. This time, it wouldn't be under the UFC banner, but through Oscar De La Hoya's Golden Boy Promotions instead.
All done the right way at the right time.
I don't have any regrets. I had a great time. I mean, it was fun. I got paid a lot of money to do what I love for a living, and my body held together pretty dang well.
Dana White was furious about the fight. He called the California State Athletic Commission's approval absolutely disgusting. His argument was simple. He'd retired Chuck in 2010 specifically to protect his long-term health. November 24th, 2018, Chuck and Ortiz met for the final time at the Forum in Inglewood, California. The end came quickly in round 1. Ortiz knocked out Chuck with punches at 4 minutes and 24 seconds, Chuck's 7th career knockout loss and 4th consecutive dating back to the California State Athletic Commission hit Chuck with an indefinite medical suspension. No more fighting in the United States. The Guardian called it a disgusting spectacle. Critics everywhere argued it was completely irresponsible to expose Chuck to any more brain damage. March 2020 brought Chuck's confirmation that he was permanently done with MMA competition. The effects of Chuck Liddell's fighting career didn't magically disappear when he stopped competing. All that accumulated damage from years of brutal wars followed him home. October 11th, 2021. Los Angeles County Sheriff's deputies got called to Chuck's Hidden Hills residence for a domestic situation. A verbal argument between Chuck and his wife Heidi Northcott had turned physical with pushing and shoving. Their daughter saw the whole thing, but couldn't say who started it. Chuck had a small red mark on his face and another near his chest. Heidi didn't show any visible injuries. Chuck got arrested on misdemeanor domestic battery charges. They booked him at the Malibu Lost Hills Sheriff's Station and released him on $20,000 bail. Within hours of getting out, Chuck posted on Instagram, "Last night I was actually the victim in this situation at our home, and the case details will prove that. The deputies told me they were going to arrest my wife, since I didn't fight back when she attacked me, even though I had bruises and cuts. I chose to go to jail instead of her. I've tried to hide this family mental health situation from everyone, many times because I love her and stay loyal, but now I see that's impossible. This relationship needs to end." October 18th. The Los Angeles County District Attorney's Office decided not to file charges against either person. Not enough evidence to proceed. They labeled it a cross-complaint, since both parties accused the other of being the aggressor. 4 days after the incident, Chuck filed for divorce. They'd been together since around 2009, and had 2 kids. The legal process dragged on for almost 4 years. September 2022 brought disturbing claims from Heidi Northcott in court documents from their custody evaluation. She alleged Chuck was showing symptoms of chronic traumatic encephalopathy, the brain disease linked to repeated head injury. Court filings obtained by the Blast quoted her saying, "He's been knocked unconscious many times and has CTE. His memory is shot and he gets stuck trying to talk. He's heading toward dementia or Alzheimer's disease. His sleep apnea is terrible." Northcott made additional mental health accusations. She described depression, paranoia, impulsive behavior, and using drugs and alcohol to escape reality. She claimed his actions were becoming more unpredictable and violent. You can't definitively diagnose CTE without examining the brain after death. But Chuck's career provided plenty of reasons for worry. 7 knockout defeats throughout his career. 4 of them back-to-back in his final 5 fights. His aggressive, brawling style meant taking heavy shots to land his own. Years of hard sparring sessions added even more damage. Concerns about Chuck's brain health started way before those 2022 accusations. As early as 2012, reporters were noticing slurred speech and trouble finding words during interviews. A 2007 appearance on Good Morning Texas showed him looking sleepy, slurring his words, and actually falling asleep while being interviewed. The Nevada State Athletic Commission demanded a drug test before they'd sanction his next fight. He passed the test. Years later, Chuck explained he'd been sick, partied the night before, and taken a big dose of Ambien. The effects lasted much longer than expected. He couldn't even remember traveling from Texas to California. The custody evaluation recommended Chuck and his ex-wife share joint custody of their children. The court ordered random drug testing for both parents. The divorce became final in April 2025. The terms included joint, legal, and physical custody. Chuck agreed to pay $5,000 monthly in child support, set up a $700,000 education fund, and cover medical expenses and activities. Heidi got a one-time spousal support payment of $771,000. Chuck's attorney Juliana Loyola said after defeating numerous false accusations against Chuck, both parties reached a divorce settlement outside of court. Chuck is an excellent father, He has always prioritized his children and will continue doing so. October 2025 saw Chuck remarry. He wed Heidi Ray in Las Vegas. Chuck has been proactive about addressing his brain health concerns. In 2024, he traveled to BioAccelerator in Colombia for stem cell treatments designed to reduce joint inflammation, prevent CTE development, and promote longevity. The facility runs clinical trials for concussion syndrome and CTE. Chuck's situation isn't unique. It highlights major problems throughout MMA. Unlike the NFL or boxing, MMA has no fighters union or pension program. Retired fighters face physical and financial struggles without union-backed healthcare or retirement benefits. Many resort to crowdfunding or completely unrelated work. The Guardian highlighted the struggles of former fighters and inadequate protection against exploitative comebacks motivated by financial desperation. Chuck also got scammed in a 2007 real estate deal. He invested in properties with developer Kelly Gearhart, who eventually pled guilty to wire fraud and money laundering. The escrow officer improperly released Chuck's money and allegedly forged signatures. Chuck never got his properties. 2015 brought Chuck nearly $2 million in damages. Despite everything that's happened, Chuck's legacy as a pioneer remains intact. He stays involved through podcasts, promotional appearances, and UFC events. In 2025 interviews, he praised modern fighters like Alex Pereira as legitimate warriors. His story works as both inspiration and cautionary tale. Chuck helped transform MMA from underground spectacle into worldwide phenomenon. He brought millions of fans to events and motivated countless future fighters. But his aggressive chin-first approach carried serious long-term consequences. As of 2026, at 56 years old, Chuck continues dealing with health challenges. His ex-wife's CTE allegations haven't been proven, but they match patterns we've seen in other combat sports athletes. Memory problems, speech issues, sleep apnea, personality changes. The big question remains whether his body has held up as well as he thinks, and more importantly, whether his brain has too. That wraps up this story. For more compelling content like this, check out the suggestions on your screen.